Welcome to Illuminated by Morehouse, a conversation series through which the college brings the discourse from the hallowed halls to the digital world to spark intellectual conversations, challenge perspectives, and make an impact. For this episode, we're sitting down with TV, film, and media veterans to discuss the current state of the industry, the progress being made, and the journey still left to complete. From Oscar So White to the influx of shows and movies centering people of color in front of the camera as well as behind, there can be a comforting sentiment of progress. However, who is calling the shots? That's what our panelists are looking to discuss. Me, I am Adele Henderson, host of the Who's Who in Black Hollywood podcast and guest host for today's special episode of Illuminated. I'm the Vice President of Multimedia Content and Programming for Real Times Media, the publishing house which owns so many of the amazing historically Black-owned publications in this country, in addition to other digital media platforms. Look us up. I've been so blessed to work and consult in the media and entertainment industries for over 25 years at influential Black brands such as BET, Stars, Vibe, and the trailblazing Black men's publication, King Magazine. I'm joined today by two incredible revolutionary professors, Dr. Stephanie Dunn and Avery Williams, who I will let introduce themselves now.
Hi, I'm Dr. Stephanie Dunn, a writer, professor, and filmmaker at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm the author of 2 books, Bad Bitches and Sassy Supermamas, Black Power Action Films, and the forthcoming novel, Snitchers. I'm one of the co-founders of the Cinema, Television, and Emerging Media Studies major at Morehouse College, and I teach screenwriting, African-American cinema, film criticism and theory, and creative writing, and I'm happy to be here today to talk about topics in Hollywood, in Black Hollywood. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Avery O. Williams, a proud member of the Morehouse class of 1986 and a graduate of NYU's Tisch School of Film. For more than 20 years, I've been a screenwriter, producer, director in television and film, and several of my works can be seen basically on Amazon. Skin, Misguided Behavior, and plenty. For the last 10 years, though, I'm proud to say that I have served as one of the co-founders of the Morehouse College Cinema, Television, and Emerging Media Studies Department, as well as assistant professor specializing in teaching, production, screenwriting, and film studies. And I'm proud to be here this day and to have a discussion with you and my wonderful colleague, Stephanie Dunn, as we discuss moments in film.
So here we are, 2022. It seems like we're kind of in this resurgence now when it comes to Black Hollywood. Over the last maybe, 10 years or so, we've been seeing like a lot more Black programs, a lot more Black films, more Black creatives. And it kind of feels as if this type of thing has happened in phases. Like thinking back to Black exploitation days in the 70s, all of those amazing films and TV shows that came about. Late 80s, early 90s. We dealt with a lot of hood movies, and we also had some great, strong television shows, Cosby Show, Different World, Martin, Living Single. But here we are again. So, what are your thoughts? Does it feel like, we're here to stay right now? Are we really still making progress?
So here's what I'd say. I think that if you break down periods, first you have to understand that what we get in terms of historical perspective is a little bit skewed in that from the 70s, you might hear largely or primarily about Blaxploitation. But that was really a Renaissance era, and that's one of the book projects that I'm working on is revisiting that era outside of those films. Because that era, the 1970s, that decade, we saw everything from Ossie Davis directing A Black Girl to Sweetback's Badass Song to The Spook Who Sat by the Door to Claudine to Cornbread Earl and Me, which brought us Lawrence Fishburne, to Sparkle, which brought us Eric Monte. It is a very rich decade that really hasn't been plumed enough in terms of appreciating the renaissance of Black directors and Black stories that we had. And I think the same is true if you look at the 80s or 90s, because of course we intersect with Spike Lee coming along, but there's a certain level of attention and of Hollywood mainstream studio attention, right? That might have backed a certain narrative of Black life and experience. But that is not to say that there wasn't a far richer reservoir of filmmaking by independent, directors of color in Hollywood going on. So I think that's a very important point to say.
So, I mean, just to bounce upon what Stephanie said, that I often tell my students that it's like every 10 years, white America rediscovers black folks, you know? You talk about the black exploitation period, that was really only a period of approximately 3 years, you know, before Hollywood sort of rebounded and went on to do other things. And then we had, of course, the period of Spike Lee and John Singleton, and that was a hot little moment. And so now you mentioned this moment that we have now. Is it hot, you know? So to a certain degree, yeah. I mean, there are more black creators. Still, we're only like 6% behind the scenes, whereas in front of the camera, 12 to 13% of the faces on camera now. So you may think there are more black people involved in it, and there are from the acting point of view, but behind the scenes, we still have a ways to go to catch up to where we really should be in terms of representation.
And we're talking about both crew on sets and producers in that wide swath of power, and also skilled, right, personnel on sets. And then we have to remember that this thing is cyclical. I'm always telling people, I said this on an NPR interview I did with someone I was the only black person on this interview. And of course they were going, oh, this is very exciting, because I forget what year it was, but it was probably 2019 or something like that. And they were talking about, so exciting that there was this black nominee, and that how far were we from the 2016 Oscar So White? Right. You know, we've been having an Oscar So White and a Hollywood So White since the NAACP was having conversations about Birth of a Nation, right, in the early 1900s. Mm-hmm. And so I always caution that it's very exciting. It's very exciting to have the Tari Turners, the Issa Raes, the Shonda Rhimes, all of these people, right, finding their way and making a big splash. But at the same time, don't sleep on the fact that we've had similar sort of the feel of transformation, and then it cut short. So the goal now is to not merely sort of luxuriate in a moment that seems like we've arrived, but instead to be working for, right, to make sure that this has longevity, that this is a actual transformative moment, and not something that is merely cyclical. And we're going to come right back to going, wow, where are all the black creatives, and where are the opportunities for black creatives in, say, 10 years?
So that transformative moment that she's talking about, that's black creatives, let's bring in a word that we don't talk much about, the term showrunner. All right? Right. And what is the showrunner, and why is that important? Well, the showrunner, for your audience may not know, is the showrunner is primarily a writer and a producer, and basically they set the tone, they set the pacing, and they hire the other writers on a series. So of course we know some are become household names like Ava DuVernay, Courtney, what's her name for? Courtney, yes, right. For the Power, right. Shonda Rhimes, you know, right. These become well-known names. But these are only just a handful of showrunners. So why do I bring that up? Because television now has really transformed. You know, it's not just there's TV and there's movies. They have really sort of merged in this huge way that sometimes we don't know whether something is released at the movies or released on HBO Max, or it's all on this big screen that we have at home, the 72-inch that you probably have at your house. You know, right? But who's actually deciding what things look like, how they sound, who's being hired? And that's that showrunner position. And Hollywood is hurting for showrunners. I was out in LA not too long ago, and there's a project I'm working on with Byron Allen. And one of the first things he said, man, we need to find us a showrunner for this. And we've been looking. And as soon as we find a good one, they're working on something else. Right. So if we're talking about this transformative moment, I think we ought to transition ourselves into becoming showrunners and run our shows.
Yeah. And students, you know, we teach at Morehouse, and our students are just now kind of getting that into their lexicon. Because they're normally, what do you want? Director, I want to be. Right. And so they're just now sort of getting the sense of that the seat of power, if you will, is the showrunner, particularly in television, which now extends into film, as my colleague was just saying. And so we're having to teach them that this is something to aim to consciously want to be, to try to pursue, because this is not just sort of a creative position. This is like an executive level type power position when you're talking about show
they decide money, man. That, right.
And
who gets paid?
Hired?
Right. Who gets hired? Right.
It's like Shonda Rhimes. I mean, imagine what Ava and Shonda Rhimes did with those two shows, How to Get Away with Murder and Scandal. People like Debbie Allen, who are longtime television directors, but weren't necessarily, to be honest, getting regular work directing episodes of Scandal, et cetera. And then you get the same thing with Ava DuVernay, right? Creating the show on O and bringing in all the Julie Dashes and all of these folks who have been ignored by Hollywood to direct episodes. So they have the opportunity to show, right, their continued talent and get opportunities to work and what they're masters at.
Right. And not only to direct episodes, but also to write the episodes too. I think that says a lot. I'm as both writers, I'm always looking at how well is it written. Where are the stories coming from, the characters? How are they designed? And unfortunately, a lot of people who are designing and writing characters don't necessarily look like us or have our experience. So one of the key things about the showrunner is like, yeah, I can tap into a Stephanie Dunn or an Avery Williams and bring them into it and let them bring in the fullness of their cultural experience into the writing room.
Yeah.
So are we in that space now to where if we aren't able to maintain this sort of Renaissance space, is it on us? Is it a thing to where, because it seems as if when we talk about those eras, when we talk about the 70s, 80s, we had quality products. We had content that we all love and we still quote and we still, watch to this day. But now it seems as if we sort of have the keys in a sense because there's so many different platforms to get your content out there. So is it a thing now to where if we don't take things to another level, it's on us?
I think the level that you're talking about is it needs to be discussed, So what I'm talking about that. To a certain degree, it is on us. Now we do have a level. You can actually write a series and put it on YouTube and have yourself a wonderful web series. Issa Rae did that, with hers, But yet there are still other levels. You're not going to write nothing and just throw it on HBO Max. You're not going to write nothing and just get it on Peacock. There are still gatekeepers to those particular levels.
Right.
But it is incumbent upon us to create and to keep creating and to understand what doors and what levels we do have available to us. And, and there are more, but we just don't have the BETs or the TV ones. There are other platforms that perhaps can be available to us, but it's incumbent upon us to first create, then explore, and then make it happen.
Because I think the thing that's important is that when you're trying to get, though, to the Apples, to the HBO Maxes, to Amazon, the gatekeepers are often interested in the name recognition that someone who's a star brings, which means that's for someone emerging, for someone who is not Viola Davis, right? You need to have Viola Davis to get that in the door. You can be very talented and have this great product, but somebody has to see it. You need to have some sort of attachment. It's very difficult still to sort of walk in the door and go, okay, here is this great script that I have for this great series. I have this whole Bible here. It has to usually be ushered in to someone, right, that they know. And who they know is still relatively limited. And then they do a thing called, there may be someone who gets this breakthrough, and then they'll do that to death. They'll just that one black person will become the person who's right to every single thing because they feel like, okay, we've affirmative actioned it, right? We have this person doing everything, but they're not really interested in the continuing pipeline. And we're very big on the pipeline into the industry.
So how do we feel now in terms of, seeing Shonda Rhimes, get her amazing opportunity at ABC and then get a much bigger opportunity over at Netflix, to see Mara Kill get deal. I mean, for these creatives, we got Will Packer, producing the Oscars. For years, Reginald Hudlin has produced almost everything. Like how do we feel now in terms of the progress? I know it's still a super, super small representation, but in terms of progress? Is that like smoke and mirrors? Should we still be kind of angry, or do we, just celebrate these wins? Like, what space should we really be in based on what the numbers really are?
Isn't it all of them though? Perhaps because movements push the studio system, push the industry forward. This has been true since movies and popular culture via television have existed. If there is a civil rights movement or a struggle for some rights, whether it's a Black Lives Matter or it was the gay rights movement or the second wave feminist movement or the civil rights movement, culture responds. The things that we produce respond. And often what's pushing it forward is not that Hollywood or the industry has some moment of like, you know what, we have got to get more Asian people of Asian descent and more people of African descent in these roles. And no, what happens, right, is that the culture outside of the set pushes it forward, the demands. It happened in the 60s when, Hollywood sort of, was still interested in Sidney Poitier's perhaps more mainstream representation. It appealed to a lot of white folk, a lot of middle class Black folk love Sidney Poitier too. So I love Sidney Poitier, but there was a moment in which the Black Power movement and such pushed forward a demand, right, for more diverse characters that represented, people would say, a more militant or more diversity in the stories. And so that's how you got other stories. And that's how you got people like even Jim Brown on the screen in integrated cast, playing a badass of sorts, right? And so I'm saying that this also has to do with the societal climate. What is happening in terms of a particular movement and rights, and how is it exerting pressure on the market in such a way that Hollywood listens? Because Hollywood is a bit of a come lately, the industry. When it comes to that, it's usually pushed forward. It doesn't just sort of, right? So that's why I said it's a combination of both. We celebrate the wins. Obviously, we celebrate that, wow, we can name more people who might be producers. We can say Will Packer, and we can say Datari Turner, and we can say all of these people, and Ava and DuVernay, all these people. But at the same time, we got to have a consciousness about the fact that these things can seem transformative. I'll say this again, they can seem transformative when really it's a moment that has to have the work and the force behind it to continue to be a truly sort of transformed system. So we're not sitting here having this conversation in 20 years, right? And you're going, wow, this is the same version of the conversation that was had in 1909 and in the 70s and 2016. So it's, you know what I mean? It's that kind of continued kind of understanding that this industry is like other industries. It doesn't just open the doors to change and to diversity because it's a good thing. I mean, we'd love to get, and it is a good thing. It's even economically sound, but it doesn't work like that, is what I'm saying.
But the thing I'm curious about you both are creatives, still very active. At the same time, you're scholars, right? So the scholar portion, and even from a creative standpoint, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors that you two could see through, right? So the thing that I'm curious about is, how is it that, it's not even just been said, but it's been facts, Black culture, just create, whatever is hot in pop culture, when it comes to lingo, fashion, music, just overall personality. How is it possible that the things that we're doing is so impactful, and somehow it's made to appear as if our presence is so big, but on the business side, on the real creative side, it's so small? How is that even possible? Right?
Well, I mean, you mentioned smoke and mirrors. I mean, the bigger the mirror, the bigger the image, But the point of the matter is like, well, then who owns the mirror, right? And who's putting the image up there?
But we've had several attempts of, we're going to do our own, but for whatever reason, we don't.
So, all right, so let me go back to something that you said. You asked, how do you feel, right? And so I don't want to come across as the the angry creative who they won't let my work out, right? Because
But some of
that's
that is legit.
right, but that's not who I am, right? Because let me tell you why. I am excited. I'm excited about the potential. And I see certain things happening that are in terms of potential. Like I have to admit, when I saw Issa Rae's Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl, I was actually hyped. I was like, wow, this little 7-minute raggedy first episode transformed her into this worldwide phenomenon.
Right.
And I'm excited about that potential opportunity. When I see something like, and I'll be honest, I watched a show called P-Valley, right, which is done here. It's ratchet to me. You know what I'm saying? It's not my thing, but I watch it. I'm on episode season 2. I'm watching everything. It's not my thing, but I'm like happy for the Morehouse student that I see in there playing the DJ. I forget his name. Right? I'm happy for Katori, I think his name is, who created it. Then I watch Euphoria, which definitely ain't me. You know what I'm saying? It's raw. It's rough. But I'm happy about the creatives involved in that. Even the whole Power series.
In Atlanta.
In Atlanta, and which I love, Donald Glover is my schoolmate. He and I both went to the same program at NYU. And so I'm happy about this. So my point being is that how do I feel? I'm actually feeling pretty good. And I'm hopeful. And I have to admit, I stand on hope, I stand on expectations. When I look around, man, I see cats at Morehouse, a cat named Ray Oglesby, who has like an incredible background in terms of his knowledge of cameras and shooting. When I see his ability to understand the technical aspect of that, and another guy named Zach Thomas who's there, it tells me these cats are understanding the technology necessary to put that image, those mirrors, those mirrors up, and create those images, and are able to do it. I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about writers like my colleague and good friend Stephanie Dunn here, who just finished a book called Snitchers that hopefully will make it to the screen. I don't know if it's Discovery's going to do it or Paramount or something like that, but maybe these cats at Morehouse and at Clark or at Spelman will be able to do it. Why? Because they have a Ray and a Zach who know how to use the equipment and make it happen. So I'm seeing the convergence of talent. Yeah. Right. So you ask me, how I feel? I'm actually hopeful, man. Do I believe? Yeah, we got a long way to go, and it's a mountain we got to climb. But brother, I got my shoes strapped. I'm ready to roll. Yeah.
See, that's the advantage of being at an HBCU, at being at a Morehouse, at being in something that is the rich reservoir that the AUC is, right? And it's always been this way. Before, not dependent on mainstream America paying attention, we already recognize Black brilliance, right? In every area, and certainly in terms of creativity. The names and the folks who have come through these 4 or 5 schools in this center. And he and I, we get to still work with and see it. I'm working with this brother who is this talented screenwriter who is working on a story as powerful as Bessie Coleman's story. And I am also able to be in the classroom with students who literally, I can see them blowing up in a few years because they're just awfully talented as screenwriters. We are bringing them in contact with people like Jordan Peele who visit and, bringing in the cast of Moonlight and showing that film before Hollywood quite got on like, oh, that's going to be the Oscar winner. We were showing the film right on campus and having Janelle Monáe here for our students close enough to actually experience. And that's really powerful. What we need now is we need both Black creatives who have ascended to a certain level, as well as others who claim to support the cause to go, what we need to be doing is we need to support the reservoir. The reservoir is here at historically Black colleges. And there are very few of them who have, standing film majors, film and television majors like CTEM, Cinema, Television, Emerging Media Studies. It needs all kinds of support because this is the transformational generation. We're nurturing it here. The faculty here are creatives, but sometimes, we labor as, you were just mentioning this, right? We seem to be out in front, but no, we're not. There's a way in which there's an invisibility that is harmful to progress because it needs support, financial support, resource support, etc., all of that.
So, just going into the support thing, one point in time, if you want to make movies, you had to be in Hollywood, you had to be in New York. And then you start going to Toronto, Vancouver, a bunch of other places throughout the States. But Atlanta, is that spot right now, and it seems like it's going to continue to be that spot. Why is it such a struggle for this to be the place to where, we're seeing that Georgia Peach it seemed like the end of every movie, every television show, but the writers' rooms, it's one thing to have, more and more Black people in these writers' rooms, but just writers' rooms, period. I'm pretty sure, we've had the conversation offline. I'm pretty sure you've talked with other, colleagues. Have there been any type of justifiable thought as to why Atlanta isn't one of those hot spots as well, to where we see these writers' rooms?
Well, one, historically, it just hasn't been, and now, but here's another practical aspect of housing. All right. When you actually work as a writer, you actually need to spend, writer's room, 6 to 7 to 9 months in a given place working on something. Housing is hard now, man, and a lot of people, if they have a nice little sweet apartment or a condo out in LA, they don't want to come here to sit here for 6 or 9 months without a beautiful place to stay. So it's fine. You say, well, okay, y'all stay there. We'll do it here. And that's what we need to do, is to start to nurture it here. I challenge any producer worth his salt who's looking at this program right now to say, okay, I'll put my money and to establish my writer's room here. And that means, for the showrunner to say, I've got to live here and bring my writers who are going to be living here and make it happen here. Now, here's what the interesting thing that COVID has taught us is that it actually now, through Zoom, can expand a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, most writers don't want to be creating via Zoom, but you can do a little bit of it, right? So that means that we can now change our understanding of exactly what a room looks like. Typically a room where everybody would be in the same place, but now a room can sometimes be where you have the same faces on the same screen. So it needs to be sort of, I think, a hybrid of that. And it just needs to be some enterprising people moving forward. I pledge to you that if some producer says, hey, look, I want to invest in a show that Avery creates, right? I will write it from here, and I will hire writers who are willing to live here and work here for a period of time to produce the show. But it takes those kind of cojones to make that happen. Because right now, when you talk about Atlanta being this great place for stuff is happening, it is for production. But on the front end, the writing is still out in LA. And on the back end, post-production largely is still out in LA too. And then we go a little further, distribution. Those decisions of distribution are not necessarily here. So out of the 4 areas of making entertainment, Atlanta just has that middle part, or Georgia, I should say, has that middle part. And it's huge. Don't get me wrong. Production is great. But there's other things that need to happen also.
Yeah. And I want to say a little bit about that. Even from the production perspective, we're still having too many situations in which the talent, the skilled talent, is being brought in.
Right.
So one of the things that was supposed to happen in Georgia with the tax credits and bringing it here was that you'd have this employable, trainable, natives or residents, right, of Georgia, and they would be having the opportunity to enter the industry, to work on these productions, et cetera. Well, that has not happened as smoothly or as much as we think, because we're still having folks who are sort of those skilled, integral pieces to any film set, the cinematographer or a lot of these people are still being brought in from Hollywood. They're, and they're going from set to set. We're not necessarily getting the appropriate sort of mentoring, training opportunities that allow for a lot of sort of people who are invested in living and staying in Georgia, right, to have those opportunities. So that plays a little bit of a role too, because we have this conversation all the time with folks who are trying to change that, who are saying, we've got to be able to have a crew, these sort of like basically Georgia bred crew, right? They train, they live here, they need the jobs here and all of that. And that doesn't necessarily happen. You can sort of recreate elitism everywhere. Like you can move physically, but you can recreate a certain bubble, right? It's just that the Hollywood bubble is now like it's here, but it's still this little bubble that's awfully hard to penetrate.
So we're here now. We're Morehouse College, right? Atlanta, Georgia, AUC. When just the thought of Hollywood sort of bogarting its way into the state and creating all these provisions, and it's like, oh man, we got the tax credit, we got the talent coming down, busiest airport in the world, and one of the things that we're going to attempt to do is have locals working. And all right, let's go ahead and fast track this Georgia Film Academy, because that's going to be, the gateway. But at the same time, you got a space like Morehouse, which this is the 10th anniversary of this amazing film program, right? We're on year 4, of an amazing film festival. Like, why isn't it? Why wouldn't it make sense to just invest in what's already here as opposed to attempting to, create something really fast that isn't really working, right? It's like you can't hold the studios accountable because it's like, man, I have these multi-million-dollar productions I bring into the state. I'm not going to just hire anyone. So why not invest in, rich cultural institutions like Morehouse as opposed to attempting to start something from scratch that you control?
So I'm gonna jump in here, and here's where the water gonna get a little hot. We was at tepid, so let's let's increase that temperature a little bit. So you mentioned the Georgia Film Academy. So it is a good thing, obviously, to try to harness the local employable sector to work on sets, obviously, that are in Georgia, right? So Georgia Film Academy is at the Trilla Studios, former Pinewood Studios, and they've built this, pretty mighty system so that people can come from these different schools. If they're at Georgia State, that's one of the schools. I know there's several other schools, and they have been absolutely courting the historically Black colleges in the AUC Center. So the question might come, okay, so why haven't there been sort of I guess you could say, a locked in partnership with all those schools yet? It's something that you mentioned. There's a real problem, I think, we have with the ideal that people should come and get Black students of color who are attending AUC Center schools through a third party. Now, there's something fundamentally that doesn't make sense. Should we have a situation where studios are asking, they are aware, because now there have been graduates who have gone to work for marketing companies, selling the movies that some of these companies are making. So they might ask questions like, do you have Morehouse interns? Do you have Spelman interns? Do you, et cetera? And I understand that it would be great business to be able to say, yes, we do. We can usher those right in. But why wouldn't a Morehouse or Spelman be the ones to usher those students in partnership with the studios or the production companies themselves? Why would we, quote, sell ourselves to go through a third party with what we have and what we do every day as an investment that is even beyond money? It's certainly beyond our paychecks. Mm-hmm. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there is a way in which when business comes, everybody wants to own it. But I take real issue at anyone trying to own us and us not owning us and being able to exploit it to the best of our situation for our students, right? And for our faculty in the AUC.
I have a question that could get a little that can get a little spicy and a little awkward. Just based on the state of where Black Hollywood is, and in many ways always have been, even though we're making progress, do you feel as if the black creatives that are winning, you know, behind and in front of the camera, even putting an emphasis on those that come from HBCUs, do you feel as if they're doing enough to move us forward?
I mean,
Some of them are, and some of them are not. Definitely, some of them are, some of them are not.
It's kind of safe. What do you so percentage
No,
wise?
but it's true.
Do you
But
think,
it's true though. It's true. I mean, we think about this. We might not. I mean, I know we don't. It's the name is taboo now. But people like Bill Cosby were some of the first to contribute to historically black colleges in sort of a mighty way, right, in terms of putting the money where the mouth is, right? And of course, you've had the Oprahs and different folks who've specifically given money to HBCUs or to programs to start in the industry. It's not that stuff isn't happening, but there is far more money being spent and earned that is represented in the giving pocket of where they could. I mean, we can talk about reparations is a very important conversation, and I believe, just going on the record, it should happen. But within our community, we should be leading the way. Those who have, right? And especially it reflects the industry you're in. Your music, you're in journalism, you are a television, a film person, not to be having a sort of commitment. A commitment to, not because you have to or because there's some unwritten rule, but I would question, like, what is the lack of motivation not to want to create other yous? Or because that's what white folk have done. You know, they mentor in lines of successors, do they not? They make sure that they're doing it now politically, right? To make sure that what? Like, we don't know, they're in their minds, they're like, no. We don't want to become ever minority power. I said minority power because they're like, we need to own a state that represents us, that serves our interests, that is going to mean our children's interests, right, are going to be served. And the students at the colleges where we're sending them, they're going to be served, and on and on. They're consciously at work and coalescing around those ideals.
So let me ask you, with that being said, some are doing, some are not, doing for Black Hollywood what they should in terms of, representatives of whether they're from HBCUs or just, Blacks in general. Like, who are the ones you mentioned, Cosby, he definitely took the lead early. Like, who are some of the ones currently that are, that stand out in terms of, just making a difference or putting forth the effort? I keep hearing Datari's name. Like, who are some of the others out there that are really putting in the work to help us?
Well, there's one, David Talbot, I can say personally. David directed Jingle Jangle for Netflix at $100 million budget. And one of the first things David did after coming off the success of that was that he called me and he connected me with the university or another university and said, hey, look, I want to actually create a program where I can bring students from HBCUs into LA, let them work in the industry and then have an internship with my company, but and work with one of the agencies. He was actually trying to set up a program, and that's still somewhat going on, So David Talbot is definitely one. Will Packer, I know he just built something down at FAMU. I'm not sure, an auditorium down there. That was that effort. Then there is Byron Allen, interesting enough, who a lot of people sort of poo-pooed for years, of not being engaged enough. Well, recently he bought HBCU Go. He just bought the Black News Network. And then, of course, he owns the Weather Channel. Well, I know also personally that he's also now trying to invest in products and projects that are for those networks that he bought. He just recently bought what's his name, Rushion McDonald's show to put it on the Black News Network, and he's working with other entities to try to make certain things happen. So I can't laundry list you and tell you what everybody's doing with their money. We always hope that they would do more,
right?
But I would hope that they are doing, doing a lot. Is there a summit where we can all get together and say, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I don't know. Maybe.
And there are people too, though, that whose names you won't know and that people might not be familiar with, like Stacy Milner. Stacy is a person who for years has been making this active effort with her organization to make sure that HBCU students get opportunities in the industry with internships. She's been doing this, a long time, since the beginning of CTEMS. Probably, I know she was coming and she was helping to place students on the Tonight Show and here, and they come in the summer, and she's still doing it. We had maybe 5 or 6 of our students this summer alone. And they were everywhere from WME to, working for ABC to CBS. And many of them end up, after interning in the summer, 1 or 2 summers, getting permanent positions. But also it's the introduction to the mentoring. They're being able to meet people and to get professional representation, mentoring, and all of that. So people like that, whose names you probably don't know, are also laboring to make the pipeline, like to make that pipeline go, even when attention is not on it. Even when there's no story in the media going, oh, we have to do more for diversity because this just happened. People like that are at work all the time.
Now we say though, because we're trying to get some names of those love to people who're doing some things, Right. But at the same time, and I think that's the nature of your question. We wish there's some other people who would definitely do more. I mean, Beyonce, I'm a huge fan of hers. Right? She just came out with an album. God bless her and everything, and but. And her gift to the HBCU community was a gift certificate or something, or membership to Peloton.
That faculty could not actually utilize or staff for free or at a serious discount.
I appreciate her wanting us to be in shape, but what about our financial shape, B? And then look. How many hours do we spend watching football on the weekends or basketball? And we're watching millionaires run up and down the court, for 4 hours, on a Sunday, maybe, 2 hours basketball games, watching them run up and down the court. Well, what about these millionaires sitting in our stands, watching our output as we watch their output, right? And so, instead of us contributing always to their millions, because that's what we are as fans, how about them becoming fans of what we're doing?
We need the Deion Saunders movement, right? What he is doing right now really is revolutionary.
Right.
A person, and we make that choice every day.
Right.
He's a person who could go anywhere, but specifically chose, right? Because he's like, this is bigger than just me, right? And I could make millions going to coach for whatever, here. But I can use my name and my career, my legendary career, to do what? To bring money to Jackson State and to other HBCUs, to get attention on Black coaches and players, to get the players so they're not left out of this NIL, these poor students coming from all over, so that they can get NIL type of media attention. That is powerful as hell, but it's not happening like that everywhere. I mean, right? In that same way. Right. When you get movement, like there is a Ta-Nehisi Coates at a Howard, making the conscious decisions like we're going to build this and we're going to build it at a HBCU, man, that's powerful. But it hasn't been happening enough, right? And then you need the money to create those spaces.
Right. To be able to see a lifestyle that didn't seem attainable for many of us. For many of us, it didn't seem realistic, but, as they crafted that show so well, it was just choreographed so well to where we believed it, right? We believed a different world. A different world, sparked the interest for so many to go to HBCUs, so did school days, right? We're in the 30th anniversary of Boomerang, that Black excellence that, Eddie Murphy and Reginald Hudlin put on that screen. It didn't seem weird, it seemed natural for all these amazing Black executives and just people in business and, just look fly, right? It seemed realistic. As educators, there's certain things that you're able to see in your students before they can see it in themselves, right? So you kind of set the tone for for so much. For Black Hollywood, okay, yeah, the Peloton thing was cool with that Beyonce did with the HBCUs. I'm thinking in some senses maybe they don't see the big picture. Maybe they don't see, like, you know what, this is how your contribution could lead to something so much bigger, right, and so much more effective, long term. Whether it's for HBCUs, whether it's for Black Hollywood, like who are some individuals who have some superpowers that if they share their superpowers in a certain kind of way, it can make like such an amazing impact that they may not even see it yet.
All right, well, look, I mean, there's a guy right down the street. His name is Tyler Perry. You ever heard of him? All right, right, okay, yeah. I mean, in terms of superpower, I give the man credit, a master businessman.
Right.
He extricated himself from his homeless situation and doing those plays, which I did for a while too, and to becoming a super player in this world. Well, he's right down the street from us. And look, and I'm not pointing fingers at either him or Morehouse, but somehow we have not connected the way we should have yet. Now, Tyler may be watching this now and be like, okay, I need to connect. And I'm praying they're hoping that he will. And why is that? Because, yeah, he is a huge player. And how can that, and he doesn't know how he can help in so many different ways. We did a tour of his studio with some of our students in May. And that was at the blessing of, what's the brother's name who runs the studio over there?
Is it Rob?
Boyd, Mr. Boyd.
Right. And that was a blessing. But, we were in a van riding around just looking at the buildings, We need to get inside the buildings. We need to see what a volume looks like, We need to get in there and see, our students need to see exactly how Tyler puts together his shows. Now, don't worry, we're grateful to ride around and look at the buildings on the outside. But in terms of a super player can bring us in the buildings and let us work. So I even proposed this. How about instead of, we sometimes crowded over here at Morehouse in terms of our students, how about us having a class once a week in one of the sound stages there? Right down the street.
Right.
We could have a class there.
And
let executives drop by.
Right.
Or artists drop by.
Further than that, though. I don't think naming names is helpful as much as it is the vision. What we need is not the super visionaries with money who understand that George Lucas and Spielberg aren't the only ones who should have their name on the building that they built, that their money channeled, right? Who wants to say, I can put my name on this building where Dr. King himself and the Spike Lees and Sam Jackson, all these folks came through here, right? I can build a state-of-the-art building with my family's name on it or my great-grandfather's name on it or whatever. Or I want to honor Oscar Micheaux or Tracy Souders or whoever the early filmmakers are. And this building will probably stand another 200 years or more after I'm gone. So it's the supervision. The scholarships are needed. Don't get me wrong. You give $150,000 to us, we are going to use that money. It is going to be beneficial. But when you start going, I am going to build, these students should learn in a state-of-the-art building with a beautiful auditorium and XYZ, and I'm going to honor, this my own journey and also these other folks who had to labor so hard. Now that is supervision.
Right, and Stephanie's so right.
But I think two things. One is that a lot of times the summits that happen, like there are a lot of summits that happen that are, a Hollywood, Blacks in Hollywood conversation. But a lot of times I don't think that the conversation is revolving around that as a goal. It's more about people sharing their journey and their prospective roles, talking about the need for diversity, sharing information about whatever diversity pocket they might be doing. You see what I'm saying? Which is far different from having a conversation as we do when we're talking about reparations. I'm part of an organization that does work about reparations, and there's a whole document. Mm-hmm. It's a point plan, a plan with points about how, not only why reparations, but how they can be achieved, like how they could be, right? I'm not sure that we've gotten to the point where this ideal that you've suggested here has taken shape as comprehensively, because a lot of times the conversation is around people sharing their kind of individual or and they're representing companies a lot of times in the industry. So like, we're having a summit, but this is so-and-so from Netflix, this is some from HBO. Do you see what I'm saying? Which is not the same as a collective meeting that is focused on, let's come up with this sort of point plan and the solutions, like, okay, suggestions for, hey, consider donating money to these programs that support teaching Black students. And I just don't think that has quite, I find it intriguing, the ideal, mind you. And I think the other part of this is back to what we were saying earlier, that we do not exist in the same universe that the NAACP did in the early days, before digital media, before we existed in these digital pockets. So I think there are barriers in terms of the communication. And also there's, there's Black Republicans and there's Black Democrats and there's Black independents, right? When we say Black Hollywood, even so, there are people out there who are going to take offense, and they're going to, what do they mean by Black Hollywood? Even believe me, for us, we're talking about even the historical implications and the contemporary thing. But for some folks, it's like there's no, Black Hollywood. They're going to say something, ridiculous, like it's only the green that counts, as if it's, as if it has nothing to do with the racial politics of Hollywood or the gender politics of Hollywood. We know that it does. So I'm saying these are all, I think, challenges to forming some kind of cohesive agenda. It's not that it can't happen, because we can look at political and social movements and know it can happen, right? From before the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm just saying that it hasn't happened, but I'm certainly interested in the exploration of it.
What happens? You talk with the big wigs. They say, well, what kind of talent you got over there? Are they writing? Are they directing? It's incumbent upon us to say that, yes, we are training these young men on how to do it. And that's why we have a Sundance Award winner coming out of here. That's why we have kids working at Disney and, in their fellowship program. That's why we have folks that are working at NBC Universal, because we are training them. We are giving them the skills necessary to survive. And then the other part of that, are you all getting what you all need by way of your support? Are you all able to support yourselves and be those creators, that are doing it? So it goes both ways in that sense. We got to do our part, and which we are. And I'll tell the world right now, yeah, we're doing it. And we're doing it in a good way. But now y'all going to do your part. And that's how we're going to come together.
I'll give you a good example, I think, to end with. Of course, Oprah had already supported Morehouse with a very generous gift before, and there were many Oprah scholars, right? Even her last show, if you recall, some of you, the last show for her talk show, they brought the Morehouse scholar, recipients with the candles, and it was a beautiful moment, all of these, right? Now, she came what was it now, just 3 short years ago, right before COVID, maybe, right?
It was right for COVID.
She made that historic visit back to Morehouse after all this time, right? And she ended up giving some more money to the college. And the thing that happened, we talk about it amongst ourselves, and I'm going to talk about it with the rest of y'all, is that we know that the thing that was the defining moment in deciding to I got to give more money to this Morehouse thing is, why? Because she interacted with our faculty, that's particularly in this case, Dr. Jan Adams, and the these students. And they were, as they are, impressive, spending a day talking to these young, distinguished gentlemen. She was like, hey, it's worth it, the first money, and I'm about to put some more in it, because it's worth some more, because they just impressive. And she was just as impressed with the faculty members who were right with them and interacting with her, right? She was on the ground with the product, right? Going, wow, right? I got to dig in here and give more. And we need more of that to happen.
Well, I'm putting it out there as a call to action. This is something we need to put in play.
Get to calling.
We need a contract for Black Hollywood. I'm already making notes. These are different things that we need to be with HBCUs. And we need to, just, not only just hold people accountable, but, put people in a position to where, and do it like, the Grammys and a lot of these other organizations, these organizations that seem like for-profits, but somehow are operating as nonprofits. Yeah, let people donate money and write it off in their taxes. So I'm pretty sure it's possible. So that's something that we're working on. But this has been a real cool ride.
Let me tell you, we've signed our part of the contract. Go on, let them sign their part.
We've
signed
10 years
in.
Yeah,
we're right. We keep it's signed and most signed. Right.
Exactly. That's all for this episode of Illuminated by Morehouse and the Who's Who in Black Hollywood podcast. Thank you to Dr. Dunn and Avery for all of your time, dedication, and work. Thank you to Morehouse for having me and collaborating with Real Times Media. And you can follow and listen to Who's Who in Black Hollywood on all social media and major podcast platforms. You can watch past episodes of Illuminated on the Morehouse College YouTube channel and stay up to date with the college via its social media channels. Now, until next time, please stay safe, stay informed, and stay tuned for the next episode of Illuminated by Morehouse. Thank you for watching.